My name is Rick. I was 38 years old when this happened. I'd been working the night shift as a nurse for just over 10 years. Same hospital, same routines. By then, I trusted protocols more than instincts. That night didn't feel different. After midnight, short on staff and long on problems, you stop thinking too much. You work almost automatically. You focus on what's assigned to you and ignore everything else. That's how you survive night shifts in the ER. The call came in just after 2 a.m. routine emergency. Middle-aged male, unresponsive. Nothing about it sounded unusual. Just another case that needed to be processed quickly. He looked to be in his late 40s or early 50s, medium build. Not overweight, not thin. The kind of body that comes from years of physical work. Pale skin, short dark hair going gray at the temples, a few days of stubble. He didn't look sick, he didn't look injured. Where his left hand should have been, there was a metal hook, old, scratched. Nothing decorative about it, just functional, the kind someone uses when they've lived without a hand for a long time. No visible injuries, no blood, no signs of trauma. He was already on the gurney when I checked him. Monitors attached, lines in place. But there were none of the signs I usually expect after a sudden cardiac arrest. By the time he arrived, there wasn't much to do. We went through the motions anyway. He never regained consciousness. A few minutes later, the doctor called the time of death. Just like that, another life ended quietly. I stayed back while the doctor spoke to the family, crying, shock, the usual collapse of a life into paperwork and silence. After that, things moved the way they always do, and then it was my job to take the body downstairs. The morgue was quiet in the way only hospital basements ever are. Not peaceful, just empty. Cold room, white lights, stainless steel everywhere. A place designed to feel nothing. I was filling out the tag when something near his left arm caught my attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw movement. Not a jerk, not a reach. Just enough to register, just enough to make me stop. I turned fully toward the table. The body was completely still. I watched his chest longer than necessary. No rise, no fall. Checked his pulse again. Nothing. I told myself what I'd told myself before, that bodies do strange things after death. 10 years of night shifts teach you how easily the mind fills in gaps. Still, I stood there longer than I should have. Everything looked normal as it ever gets down there. I zipped the bag, finished the paperwork, and left. The rest of the shift blurred together. The ER stayed full. Monitors kept sounding. Later, I took a back corridor I'd walked hundreds of times. Halfway down, I slowed. Something ahead of me didn't look right. At first, I couldn't explain it. Just a shape near the wall, too tall, too still. I stopped walking. For a second, my brain tried to explain it away. Then the light flickered, and the corridor was empty. No footsteps, no doors opening, nothing. I stood there listening, then shook it off and kept walking. Later, I asked a co-worker about that corridor. He said no one had been there, but the feeling didn't leave. My shift ended at 6:30 a.m. I stepped into the elevator alone. It started down, then suddenly stopped. The lights flickered, and the cabin dropped into near darkness. Old building, old wiring, that's what I told myself. Then my stomach tightened. A shadow stretched across the back wall, tall still. My body locked up. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed the shape at the end of it. Where a hand should have been, there was a hook. My pulse jumped. I stood there frozen, not knowing how long passed. Then the light steadied. The shadow vanished. The elevator continued as if nothing happened. Later, security checked the cameras. Nothing showed up. Just me. I don't know why I went to the funeral. I told myself it was curiosity or closure. None of that felt honest. I just knew I wouldn't be able to work another shift without seeing him again. People shared stories. Someone talked about his work. Someone else mentioned the hook. They said he hated prosthetics. The hook was simpler. It worked, they said. They laughed softly. He wasn't a case there. He was a person. Before leaving, I helped someone find a seat. I corrected his name in the guest book. Small things, things that should have been done sooner. For the first time since that night, nothing felt wrong. After a while, death becomes routine. You don't have time to carry every story. Maybe the hook is what caught my attention, but what stayed with me was the reminder that they're not procedures or charts. They're people. And sometimes, when you stop long enough to see that everything finally moves forward. My name is Ethan Miller. I was 32 years old when this happened. At the time, I'd been working as a night security guard at a luxury residential complex for only a few months. One of those places people like to call safe. Gated entrance, cameras everywhere, underground parking. The kind of place where nothing bad is supposed to happen. I worked alone. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Every night followed the same structure. I didn't stare at the camera feeds constantly. I checked them between rounds. Every 30 to 60 minutes, I walked the property. Garage levels, stairwells, storage rooms. Most nights there was nothing to report. At the end of every round, I wrote notes in the logbook. Usually just timestamps and confirmations. Doors locked, gates secure, no incidents. After a while, you stop expecting surprises. You start believing that if something serious happens, it'll be obvious. That it'll look like an emergency when you see it. That's why the first incident stood out. A little after midnight, I noticed movement on one of the garage cameras, level B2. At first, I didn't think much of it. Couples argue. Voices carry in enclosed spaces. It wasn't unusual, but then the shouting became clear. I left the security office and headed down to the garage. The air down there was cold and stale. It always smelled faintly of oil and concrete. My footsteps echoed as I walked between the parked cars. They didn't notice me at first. The man was angry. The woman looked tense, uncomfortable. I stepped closer and raised my voice. "Hey, that's enough," I said. "I'm security. You can't do this here." They both turned toward me. I explained that disturbances in the garage were taken seriously, that their apartment could be fined if it happened again. The man scoffed, but he stepped back. The woman wiped her face and avoided eye contact. For a few seconds, no one said anything. The tension just hung there between us. Then they walked away together toward the elevator. I stayed behind, listening to the doors close. Nothing else happened. It felt handled. Back in the office, I logged the incident. Verbal disturbance. No physical contact observed. It was a clean entry, the kind that closes a situation neatly. I didn't think about it again that night, at least not consciously. The next night, during my 2 a.m. round, I noticed someone near the barbecue area. That part of the property was darker, fewer lights, rarely used at night. As I got closer, I realized it was the same woman from the garage. She was sitting alone on one of the benches. Her face looked different. She had fresh bruises, one along her cheekbone, another on her arm. I stopped a few feet away and asked if she was okay. She looked up at me, startled. "I'm fine," she said quickly. She said it too fast, like she'd practiced saying it. I didn't believe her. I asked if she needed help, if she wanted me to call someone. She stood up, visibly uncomfortable, and asked me not to report anything. Said it would only make things worse, that things were complicated. She said she just needed time. I told her I was worried. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I promise I'll take care of it." There was something confident in the way she said it. Against my better judgment, I agreed not to log the encounter. I told myself I was respecting her wishes, but the discomfort stayed. 2 days later, during the early morning hours, one of the pool area motion sensors triggered an alert. That didn't happen often. I rushed over. She was lying on the pool deck, unconscious. People were gathering nearby. Someone was already calling emergency services. I stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. The police showed up shortly after. They asked questions. I told them everything: the argument, the bruises, the conversation near the barbecue area. The man was taken away in handcuffs. He was furious, kept saying none of it was real. She was taken to the hospital. He went to jail. I wrote a long report before my shift ended. At the time, I felt sure I'd done the right thing, like the situation had finally been handled properly, like the system had worked the way it was supposed to. The next day, I saw her again in the lobby. She had 4 large suitcases with her. She smiled when she saw me, said she was leaving, going somewhere far. She thanked me, said I'd helped her more than I knew. I felt relieved. The following afternoon, the man returned with the police. They went up to the apartment together. About 20 minutes later, they came back down. He looked pale. He asked if I knew where she'd gone. I told him she'd left the day before. That's when his expression changed. "She took everything," he said quietly. The words didn't sound angry. They sounded empty. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, watching him leave again. That was the moment something finally clicked. Later, I learned the rest. They hadn't been together long. She'd convinced everyone she was the victim, gained access to accounts, valuables. By the time the police understood what had happened, she was gone. No charges stuck. She disappeared completely. That's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. I hadn't just failed to stop her. I'd helped her. I'd filled in the gaps with assumptions. I'd done what felt right without questioning why, and that was exactly what she needed. I still work nights sometimes. I still monitor cameras and write in the logbook, but I learned something uncomfortable. Sometimes the victim isn't who they seem to be, and sometimes doing what feels right is exactly what someone else is counting on. I work the night shift as a janitor in a commercial building that's still under renovation. It's not a glamorous job, and it doesn't pay much. But I chose it on purpose. I like working at night. It's quieter, no supervisors, no office workers, just silence, fluorescent lights, and routine. Most nights after finishing my rounds, I sit at a folding table near the security office and study. I'm preparing for a competitive civil service exam, one of those exams that can change your life if you pass. At night, when the building sleeps, my mind feels clearer, like the future is still possible. The building is still a mess. Plastic sheets hang from the ceilings, forming narrow corridors, exposed wiring, open stairwells, dust everywhere. Every sound echoes longer than it should. After a few months, you get used to it, or at least you think you do. That first night felt normal. Doors locked, lights checked. No signs of anyone inside besides me. I sat down with my notes and headphones on. Then I heard something fall. Not loud, not explosive, just wrong. I took my headphones off and listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices. I followed the sound toward an unfinished floor. My flashlight caught marks in the dust, long scuffs, like something had been dragged. No footprints, no direction. I stood there listening to my own breathing echo inside the plastic corridors. Maybe something fell because of vibration. Maybe a loose panel. Maybe I was just tired. That's what I told myself. I went back to studying, but I didn't put the headphones back on. The next night, the building felt louder. Same place, same routine. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps, slow, careful, walking behind the plastic sheets. I called out. The footsteps stopped. Then I think I saw a shadow moving behind the plastic, but nobody was there. I radioed the supervisor. He said it was probably nothing. A worker. Wind. The cameras weren't fully installed yet. That's what I repeated to myself. By the third night, I arrived tense. This time I brought my expandable baton. Before sitting down, I decided to do a full round. Every floor, every stairwell. When I reached the stairs, I hesitated. They were unfinished and dangerous. At the top floor, I heard movement behind me. I turned around and saw someone step out from behind the plastic. I froze. I didn't think. I just grabbed my baton and moved toward him. He charged at me too. He slipped on the dust and crashed into the plastic sheets. For a moment, everything went silent. Then he ran. I didn't chase him. My hands were shaking. I locked myself in the office and called the police. The police arrived. So did the supervisor. The top floor was a mess, plastic torn, materials knocked over. clear signs someone had been there. They searched, but whoever it was had already escaped. No ID, no explanation. Days later, police reviewed footage from nearby buildings. A man had been entering the area late at night, multiple times, always alone, always leaving before morning. But the footage wasn't clear enough. No arrest. That night stayed with me, not because of the fight, but because of what could have happened. I was so focused on the future, on passing that exam, on getting out of that job, on building something better, that I forgot how fragile everything is. One wrong step on those stairs, 1 second of hesitation, one bad decision in the dark, and it could have ended differently. I still work nights, I still study, but now every time I sit down with my notes, I remember that the future I'm planning for isn't guaranteed. Life doesn't announce its turning points. Sometimes it just steps out from behind plastic sheets in the dark and reminds you how close you are to losing everything you're trying to build.